Pay attention to your breathing. And what is it that you pay attention to when you pay attention to your breathing? Do you pay attention to the flow of air in and out of your nostrils? Do you pay attention to the sensation of the air flowing down the back of the throat, in the windpipe, through the mouth? Do you pay attention to the movements of your chest? The front of the chest, the back of the chest, the upper chest, the lower chest, the right side of the chest, the left side of the chest. Or do you pay attention to the movements of your abdomen? The front of the abdomen, the sides of the abdomen, the upper abdomen, the lower abdomen. Do you pay attention to the back of the abdomen, the part of ourselves that we usually call our lower back? What do you pay attention to? And is it primarily the out-breath that you pay attention to, or is it primarily the in-breath? And do you pay attention to the timing of the breath? The duration of an in-breath and the duration of an out-breath? Or the rhythm? Whether the length of the out-breath and the length of the in-breath are the same or different? Whether one's more rapid than the other? Or do you pay attention to the volumes, whether you take, there's a lot of volume in the chest on the out-breath or a little volume of the chest on the out-breath, big volume of chest, big volume in the chest on the in-breath, or a little volume of in the chest on the in-breath? So now, in that whole field of awareness that you have, not just of your breathing, but of yourself on the floor, of yourself in this room, direct a specific part of your attention down into your abdomen. And not just any part of your abdomen, the lower part. The part of your abdomen that lies between your navel and your pubic bone. Direct your attention there within your larger field of awareness. And notice what movement is happening there as you breathe in and as you breathe out. I guess first of all, can you direct your attention to there, the lower abdomen? Perhaps just put your hand there between the navel and the pubic bone, and can you direct your attention specifically there without losing your awareness of the rest of yourself? And then once you don't need your hand there anymore, that you know, my attention is where I want it to be, you can take your hand away. And now once you've directed your attention to the location, now can you attend to the movement? As large or as subtle as it might be, to the movement of that area as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And as you do that, notice, when does your attention wander off? And when it wanders off, how do you bring it back? Notice, when is it that you start to doze off? In other words, your attention starts to get a little bit dull and fuzzy. And then how do you revive yourself? How do you revive your attention? And always, always your attention being directed to the lower abdomen, moving as you're breathing in and breathing out. And you'll notice that when you breathe in, the lower abdomen tends to swell a little bit in its volume and rises. And as you breathe out, the lower abdomen diminishes in its volume and falls back down. So there's a rise and a fall and a rise and a fall. Now, throughout this whole lesson, during its whole duration, this is where you're going to hold the primary focus of your attention. At this place and with this movement, the rise and the fall of the abdomen. And if the rise and the fall of the abdomen starts to go a little bit out of your, sensation, then keep your attention focused on that place. No matter what other movement that you're doing, this is where you hold your attention. So now, slowly explore the process of drawing up your right leg to standing and then lengthening it again. Do that many times. And notice, is it possible to keep the movement of the leg in the background of your field of awareness while you maintain all your attention in the foreground on the abdomen, the lower abdomen, its movements during breathing? So it's not like you're blind to the movements of your leg. No, you can still notice them. They're in your awareness, but they're not in the foreground. The movement of your right leg is not in the foreground. It's in the background. So as you draw up the leg and lengthen out the leg, notice whether the movements of the leg in any way disturb the movements of the lower abdomen as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Now, leave the right leg standing the next time it's standing. And now explore the same process with the left leg. So slowly draw up the left leg, bring it to standing, and then slowly lengthening it out again. Noting whether the movements of your leg are disturbing the movements of your abdomen, breathing. And perhaps if the movements of your leg are disturbing the movements of the abdomen, you could find a way to adjust the movement of the leg so that you can maintain your full attention on the movements of breathing in your lower abdomen. Now, the next time the left leg is standing, leave it standing. And refresh your full attention onto the movements of your lower abdomen, breathing. The rise and the fall of the lower abdomen. And while maintaining your attention there, notice how much of the rest of yourself have you got in your awareness. In the background there, how much of yourself can you notice? Whilst in the foreground, you have your full attention on the movements of the abdomen. Now slowly, lengthen out one leg, you choose which one, maintaining your full attention on the lower abdomen. And then lengthen out the other leg, maintaining your full attention on the movements of the lower abdomen. And just leave the legs long. Leave them long. And become aware of that place where the back of your pelvis, the sacrum, rests on the floor. In the background of your awareness, yes? In the background. And then become aware of where the back of your head rests on the floor, touches the floor. Where is that place on the back of your head that you can sense contact? And in your imagination, connect those two places with a line that goes from the back of the pelvis, the sacrum, through to the back of the head. And while you're imagining this, in the foreground of your attention is the rise and the fall of your abdomen. So there you have a central line going from the sacrum to the head. Notice the length of that line. And now in the background of your awareness, get a sense of where your right hip joint is. And get a sense of where your left hip joint is. The two hip joints, right and left. And join these two places with a line. Join the right hip joint to the left hip joint with an imaginary line. What's the width of that line, from the right hip joint to the left hip joint, from the left hip joint to the right hip joint? Can you get a sense of its width, even though this is in the background of your awareness? Now, do something similar for the shoulders, the shoulder blades. Get a sense of where the edge of the right shoulder blade is at its widest point, furthest from your midline. So the outside edge of the right shoulder, furthest from the midline. Where is that? And then get a sense of where the outside edge of the left shoulder is, furthest from the midline. And draw, imagine, project a line between these two places. What's the length of that line? What's the width? And shift your awareness to that right hip joint again. And where that right hip joint is where the right leg starts. So in your imagination, project a line from that right hip joint through to the foot where the heel rests on the ground. From the right hip joint to the right heel, project a line. What's the length of that line? And then, in which direction does that line lie? Relative to your own midline, what's the direction in which that line lies? And in the focus, in the foreground of your attention is the rise and the fall of your abdomen. Everything else is in the background of your awareness. Do the same process for your left hip joint. Locate the left hip joint and project a line from the left hip joint to the left foot where the heel lies on the ground. Get a sense of the length of that line. And then get a sense of the direction in which that line lies relative to your midline and relative to the other leg. Now, go back to the right shoulder where the furthest outside edge of the shoulder is. And then project a line from there for your right arm, from that place through the arm to the hand. What's the length of that line? And then in which direction does that line lie? And repeat that process for the other arm. Locate the outside edge that's furthest from your midline, and from that place project a line through your arm to the hand, getting a sense of the length of the line, and then also a sense of the direction in which that line lies. So now you have a very fundamental representation of your frame. A central line that goes from your sacrum through to your head. 4 limb lines. Leg, leg, arm, arm. 2 widths. The width of your hips, hip joints, the width of your shoulders. And then 4 points where the major articulations of the body are, the 2 hip joints and the 2 shoulder joints. Notice how much of this global representation of yourself can you maintain while in the foreground of your attention you're noticing the rise and the fall of your lower abdomen. Great. Keep attending to the rise and fall of your lower abdomen. Bend up your legs. Stand your feet on the floor. Slip your right hand behind your head and take hold of the front of your right knee with your left hand. So your right hand is behind your head and you're holding the front of your left knee, but just below the kneecap with your left hand. Your right knee, sorry. Left hand, right knee. Yep. And now slowly start to direct your nose towards your knee and your knee towards your nose. And as you do that, let that whole movement be in the background of your awareness, whilst in the foreground is the lower abdomen and the rise and the fall of the lower abdomen associated with your breathing. Now, if you lose track of the breathing, adjust your movements until those sensations become apparent again. Okay? Lower the head, lower the leg, and explore the same thing on the other side. So slip the left hand behind the head and take hold of the left knee with the right hand. The left hand behind the head, the right hand holding the left knee. And remember, in the foreground of your attention is the rise and the fall associated with the movements of breathing in your lower abdomen. If you can't sense that, perhaps find a way to adjust your movements so that you can. Or, alternatively, can you just simply remain with the focus of your attention on your lower abdomen whilst in the background of your awareness you're doing all these movements. The head lifting, the leg moving, different parts of the body pressing into the floor, lifting away from the floor. All these things, all these occurrences happening in the background, whilst in the foreground, clear, crisp attention on the abdomen. Great. Let that be. Rest. So when you're resting, where does your attention go? Is it still on the lower abdomen? Or has it gone off somewhere else? Refresh your attention to the movements of your lower abdomen, breathing. And this is the most important thing. Everything else is not as important as maintaining your attention here. Everything else is just background. Please bend your legs, stand your feet on the floor. Slip your right hand behind your head and take hold of your right knee with your left hand. The other leg is still standing. And now in your imagination only, imagine bringing your knee towards your face and your face towards your knee. And remember, the most important thing is to keep in your attention, in the focus of your attention, the movements of the lower abdomen associated with your breathing. So as you imagine this movement, include in your imagination what part of your face you're bringing to what part of the knee. Include in your imagination what parts of you will be lifting from the floor. Include where your eyes will be looking. Include the lowering process, what parts will come onto the floor and when. Include what you'll be doing with the chest and where in your spine will you be bending. Include the distance the head rises from the floor. Include in your imagination how far the knee travels and how far the head travels. include what part of your back will be resting on the floor at the highest point of the lift. Let that be. Leave it. Rest. Bless you. Refresh your attention onto the movements of the abdomen. As subtle as they might be or as gross as they might be, attend there. And as some of you become more and more relaxed, the movements there can be quite subtle. So remember, the most important thing is to maintain your attention on the movements of the abdomen associated with your breathing, and everything else is background. It's in the background of your awareness. It's not like they disappear. It's not like you don't know about them. You know, but they're not in the foreground. Please bend both of your legs, stand your feet. Slip your left hand behind your head and take hold of your left knee with your right hand. And now once again, in your imagination only, think of bringing your face towards your knee and your knee towards your face. And in your imagination, as you start to do that, do you stay leaning square in the middle of your back? Or do you roll off a little bit left or a little bit right? Where does your elbow go in space as the face gets closer to the knee? Where does your left foot go in space as your elbow gets closer, as your face gets closer to your knee? What happens with that right leg? Does the right foot press into the ground more or less the closer the face and the knee come together? And as you start to lower down, where does your weight return to on your back? Does your pelvis come back to a different place compared to where it was when your face and knee were close together? Include as many details in the background as you can, as you imagine bringing the face and the knee together and then letting them move apart. All the while, attending closely to the rise and fall of your abdomen. Knowing what's happening there, moment by moment, clearly. And if your imagination is interfering with the rise and fall of your abdomen, perhaps explore a way of imagining, thinking differently. Stop, leave that, rest. Bring your attention to the rise and fall of the abdomen, just like you've been doing. And attending there, re-establish the central line of your trunk from the sacrum to the head. And then re-establish the width of the two hips, from the right hip joint to the left, from the left hip joint to the right. Re-establish the width of the two shoulders, the right shoulder to the left shoulder to the right. Re-establish the length of the right leg from the hip joint through to the heel, and the length of the left leg from the hip joint through to the heel, and the directions in which those legs lie. And then re-establish the length of the left arm from the shoulder through to the hand, and the right arm from the shoulder through to the hand. Get a sense of their lengths, and then get a sense again of the directions in which the two arms lie. So there you are with this essential representation of your frame. Notice how much of that frame can you keep in mind while attending to the movements of your abdomen. Leave your legs long. Interlace your fingers. And then uninterlace your fingers. Just do that. Interlace, uninterlace. And notice your capacity to keep your movements of the abdomen in the foreground as you interlace your fingers and uninterlace them. And then slip both hands behind your head. And if at any moment your abdomen disappears, it kind of evaporates, you lose track of it, how do you bring yourself back? With your hands behind your head, lift your head and shoulders from the floor a little bit and return. And find a way of doing that where you are aware of what's happening, but not at the expense of losing track of exactly what your abdomen is doing as you breathe in and out. Right, now leave your head on the floor, bend up your legs. And now once again, lift your head, lift your shoulders, directing your elbows towards your knees. And then lower back down again. And all these movements that you're doing are in the background of your awareness. They're not as important as where the attention is placed in this lesson, which is the movements of the lower abdomen. Now, as you continue to do this movement, can you hold in your awareness, your general awareness, the line of your spine from the sacrum through to the head. So you're aware of the movements, and now you're aware also of the line of your spine. And now can you add another line? Could you add the line of your right leg? So now in the general wash of your awareness, you're aware of the movements, you're aware of the line of your spine, and now you're aware of the line of your right leg. Great. Now add the line of the left leg. Now add the line of the right arm. And for some of you, at this particular stage, you've reached your capacity. So you need to make a choice to keep on adding and lose track of the abdomen, or just to stay with what you are able to be aware of in the background. Add the line of your right arm, the left arm. Add the width of the hips. It takes a great deal of personal honesty to say to yourself, you know, I am really not able to track all of this. I'm just going to simplify it so that I can attend to the one thing that is important in this lesson. Add the width of the shoulders. And now attend to the whole essential representation of your frame. The line of the spine, the lines of the legs, the lines of the arms, the two widths, the hips and the shoulders, and the four locations. Remember the four locations? The two hip joints, the two shoulder joints. This is a great skill to be able to have as the focus of your attention one thing, and to have also in the background a complete image of what's happening. It's quite a skill. It develops gradually. Let that be in rest, please. So this is a very unusual lesson in the repertoire of lessons that Feldenkrais teaches. There are maybe a few other lessons like it, but it stands out. And the idea is pretty clear. If you can keep one major intention in the foreground of your awareness, the foreground, and then it just stays. You just know what that is, and you organize everything around it, everything. Now that's not just applicable to movement, that's applicable to everything. It's too easy to become distracted, but to stay with an intention, to clearly know what you're intending and to go seeking for that, it's very, very important. Return your attention to your abdomen, the rise and fall. Bend both of your legs, stand your feet on the floor. Interlace your fingers, put your hands behind your head. And now slowly direct your elbows to your knees and your knees to your elbows. And all the while, attend closely to the movements of your lower abdomen, the rise and fall associated with your breathing. And let everything else be in the background. Let everything else adjust to what's in the foreground of your attention. So if your movements are making you lose your abdomen, adjust. Either do less or find another way, or attend more closely. Go at a different speed. Well, actually, we could experiment with that a little bit. How fast can you go before you lose track of what's happening with your abdomen? The movements of the breathing in the abdomen. For some of you, a small little variation in speed and it's gone. For others, not so. How come? And when the elbows and the knees are at their closest place, in the background of your awareness, can you notice what part of your back are you leaning on? What's the length of your spine? What's the length of your legs, the length of the arms, the width of the hips? Where are those 4 points in relationship to each other? The 2 points of the hip joints, the 2 points of the shoulder joints. Let that be and rest, please. Bring your attention to the rise and the fall of your lower abdomen. Now, I would guess that Feldenkrais selected this particular place because of his interest in judo. And in Japanese martial arts, this place of the lower abdomen has special significance. It's the seat of the hara, which is, I guess, the closest equivalent to soul. The essence of yourself there in the hara. In terms of physics, it's also the location of the center of gravity for a standing body. So the seat of the soul and the standing center of gravity. As you're lying there, imagine that you have your hands interlaced and behind your head. Imagine that you have your legs bent. And remember, in the foreground of your attention is the rise and fall of your abdomen. In your imagination, think of bringing your knees towards your elbows and your elbows towards your knees. And if it's difficult to imagine lying like this with your legs and arms long on the floor, please feel free to get into that position. Because for some of you, It'll be easier to imagine if you're already in the position. So whatever it takes for you to clearly attend to the rise and fall of your abdomen, do that. Imagine the contact that the knees and the elbows make as they come closer and closer and closer together and then touch. And when the elbows and knees touch, be aware of the position of your pelvis, the shape of your rib cage, and then start adding those essential elements of the representation of your frame, the line of the spine and its length, the line of the right leg and its length, the line of the left leg and its length. And because this is all in your imagination, you can just stay there touching, contact between knees and elbows. The length of the right arm and its length, the length of the left arm, the width of the hips, the width of the shoulders, the two hip joints and the two shoulder joints. Keep it all in the background of your awareness, and in the foreground, attend to the rise and fall of your abdomen. And then let it all go. Just let it all go. And leave one thing: the sensations associated with the rise and the fall of your abdomen as you breathe. Attending to that in your own time, roll to one side, come to standing, experience yourself standing whilst attending to the rise and the fall of the lower abdomen. Or in this particular position, it will be the swelling and the unswelling, swelling and diminishing of the abdomen. So how do you experience yourself, having done a lesson like that? And then walk a little bit. And as you walk, is it still possible to attend to the movements of your lower abdomen associated with breathing and navigate the floor and navigate people in your visual field, coming closer, getting further, and navigate the pillars and the room and into the toilet? And then to the teas and coffees as we go into a break. Yep, so a 15-minute break. We'll come back in 15.